What's up, everyone? Welcome once again to the Football Goons podcast and the Week 3 Fantasy Football Preview Edition. These weeks got to slow down. Already Week 3 of the football season. As we record this, obviously it's Tuesday night, so we jumped the gun a little bit, but in most people's minds, we're already preparing for Week 3. 2 full weeks completed, and now the picture's kind of starting to come into focus a little bit better for your fantasy teams, but don't freak out yet. Whether it's going good, bad, or kind of somewhere in between that, there's a lot of football still left to be played. And we're planning on kind of rationally talking you off the ledge, so to speak, tonight. So we hope you've had a great start now, but we're going to bring some reasonable discussion to light this evening. Let's start with this reasonable discussion. Today is National Cheeseburger Day.
Yes.
So, are you among the few who prefers a hamburger? And if so, what do you have on it, regardless of what you have cheese-wise? What's acceptable on a cheeseburger?
I wouldn't say that I prefer a cheeseburger, but I will say if I go to a restaurant and a hamburger is like $2 cheaper for that stupid slice of cheese, I'm not paying $2 for a slice of cheese. I'll get the hamburger. It's just not worth it to me.
I'll pay it every time, but that's the difference between me and you. I'm fat.
Well,
so I'll take that cheese.
It might not be the biggest difference, but it's one of the differences. I think the bigger difference is I'm really cheap and you're not.
Well, I mean, that could weigh into it, but I'm all about the cheeseburger. I like a little bit of ketchup on there. Occasionally, I'll take some lettuce. I'm always in for a bacon cheeseburger.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not trying to do that work on my own so much, but bacon cheeseburger, a little bit of ketchup on there. But I am absolutely out on mayo on any kind of cheeseburger.
I think mayonnaise is disgusting.
I'll get mayo.
That's not going on anything. No, it's gross. and honestly, there's like all the rage right now. Speaking of National Cheeseburger Day, that they got that mayo and ketchup in the same bottle now. Gosh. Mayo chup. Oh, I'm out on that. You can throw that right in the garbage.
I don't even mind it, but I won't buy it because of the name. Like that's just irritating to me.
That's a Pittsburgh special right there.
Really?
Somebody in Pittsburgh made that up, guaranteed.
I don't know about that. So, but if you go to Five Guys, even though they're not a sponsor of this show and should be,
we're not sad if you want to be.
Yeah, that's right. We're inviting you with open arms and open mouths. But you go there, all you're getting is bacon and ketchup.
I mean, for the most part, I mean, I'll get
tragic, man.
I'll get some lettuce on there. I mean, some pickles maybe, but like I don't know. I mean,
I think
the meat does the work for itself. You know what I mean? Yeah. You got to appreciate the meat.
I think where I go depends on whether or not I get like lettuce, tomato, onion. Like if I'm like at a diner or something like that, where they have like a good burger and good lettuce, tomato, but like Burger King or McDonald's or Wendy's, like I'm not getting, or even Five Guys, I'm not getting like those trash lettuce and tomato on my burgers.
See, I want all the toppings. I get Five Guys, I go all the way. I want all the toppings, all those black toppings. Put them on my burger and in my mouth. Especially those grilled mushrooms, man.
Oh, Miles, you had the head nod going. I see you're the toppings guy. What are you putting on there?
Yeah, I'm a fan of toppings in general. I mean, cheeseburger's my favorite food, so I'm really not going to turn it away unless it is coated in mayonnaise. That's awful. Personally, my dream cheeseburger, obviously bacon cheeseburger, little cheddar. I like the onion rings on it. I like this classic, like the cowboy burger.
Yep,
onion rings, burger. Barbecue sauce or A1, mustard, lettuce, tomato, pickles, onions.
Grilled onions or raw onions?
I don't really honestly have a preference. Yeah. Well, that's all. I mean, if I had to choose, I would rather have raw, but
okay. Wow.
That's not, it's like a 10 and a 9.9. I don't care.
Both favorites. They're both good.
They're both good. And I have no issue with the mushrooms, just not on the burger I just described.
Yeah, it doesn't belong on there.
I'm going to pay homage to Miles because he told me to get this, and I never had before, but I finally did the last time I went to Buffalo Wild Wings, who should also be a sponsor of ours. But the cheese curd burger, fantastic.
It's really good. I just can't go there.
I didn't even know what a cheese curd was before that. So
That's because it sounds nasty. So you wouldn't eat it unless somebody you trust suggests it.
Yeah, and if one of you suggests it, I pretty much trust it.
All right. Well, now that I'm starving.
Yeah, really. No kidding.
Let's talk about who's trending. And when we talk about who's trending, we're looking at some of the names who are the highest claimed players on waivers across a variety of different sites here. These are the guys who maybe if there are open waivers have already been claimed the most, or the most claims have been made on them. And we're really just taking the most high profile of the names here. We're not going to get into, some of the really, really finite names for deeper leagues, just because that's a more specialized discussion here. Let's start with Ryan Fitzpatrick, Tampa Bay Bucks quarterback. He's got 9 total touchdowns through 2 games, and a matchup with the Steelers is looming on Monday Night Football. I don't know if you've watched the Steelers this year, but they give up a lot of touchdowns, a lot of passing touchdowns. They gave up 6 last week. So is he a starting option this week?
Absolutely. He has to be. I mean, the offense is flourishing. They've got aggressive play calling, and he's playing like he's got nothing to lose, which is kind of true. I mean, I think I was against it at the time when they came out and said, listen, we're not going to give Jameis the job when he comes back. And you guys had said, that's what they have to say. You can't have the guy playing knowing his job is dead. And I kind of took it as, okay, yeah, I'm with you, but it's still Jameis's job. And I just don't see that anymore. I mean, it still could be. I don't know. But the way they're playing, unbelievable. Tampa, the issue there has never been weapons. And that you saw that with Jameis Winston QB1 last year, the second half of the year. And now Fitzy's out there just slinging it, man. He's taking shots downfield. They just need a quarterback to play with confidence. And if him stealing Deshaun Jackson's clothes for his press conference and wearing that all bare, hairy chested and all doesn't sell confidence, I mean, that's all it. And then combine that with what you just said, South, about Pittsburgh getting absolutely shredded at home this week. Now they have to travel to Tampa. I love Fitzmagic this week. I'm in.
Yeah. Do we kind of like label this? It's like a quarterback thing. So we like if it's another position, a running back specifically, and a coach says, hey, we're going to play the hot hand here. Like we just kind of accept that for the most part. But is this like because it's a quarterback position, because it's, Jameis is supposed to be the franchise guy? Do we kind of dismiss that a little bit more? Like, isn't it obvious that you want to just play the hot hand?
Well, it's Jameis to me more than anything else. Number 1 overall pick not that long ago and hasn't played poorly. I mean, it's one thing with Jamarcus Russell or even Alex Smith when he was playing poorly in San Francisco. You can bench that guy. You can get away with benching that guy. But
he got benched because he got hurt.
Right, but even then, it's not like he was playing well. Yeah. I mean, he was like a poor man's now Alex Smith. He was a games manager that couldn't stretch the field. Now he's a great games manager that is stretching the field from time to time.
Right.
But anyway, back to like Jameis has played okay. They haven't won, but it hasn't been all on him.
Sure.
But I think that's kind of why I didn't buy into the hot hand thing, because you have so much invested in that guy.
Yeah, I think my only point here is that, and I'm not saying that it's. I think the biggest thing that looms is like you have to make a $60 million decision pretty soon here. You know what I mean? So you need to find out what you need to find out about Jameis at that point, and you already know that you're not making a $60 million decision about Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Right.
Like that's not going to happen. So at what point do you say, I mean, do you let just Fitz ride it out until they're just not mathematically in the playoffs? You know what I mean? Or like, how do you make that decision?
I think you have to keep him in there. And as far as in your lineup for fantasy, the only reason not to play him right now is because, well, he's Ryan Fitzpatrick. There's no other reason not to play this guy. He's number 1 in the league. But as far as the Bucks go, right now, what kind of message you send your team if you sit this guy for a guy that's been suspended, has notable problems off the field, isn't really a leader on the field, and you sit the guy that's leading your team, a team that we thought was going to be 0-2 and getting destroyed. Now they're blowing teams out, so it's a terrible message to send him. But I will say he's also the guy that is totally a candidate for he comes in, throws 2 picks in the first half, and you can bench him easily, but you can't start Jameis.
Yeah, even to build on that point, Deshaun Jackson came out today and said Ryan Fitzpatrick's on fire. you can't take him out. So the team's got his back, and I don't take that as an anti-Jameis thing.
No,
they're fired up about being 2-0. Now things could change. They got Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh could beat them, and then they have to travel to Chicago the week after that. If you're 2-2 and Fitz crashes back down to earth and you're staring the week 5 bye in the face, that's the time for me. But I definitely still play him week 4 regardless of what happens Monday night.
No matter what.
All right, another quarterback here to talk about on this list is Andy Dalton. He's owned in just 33% of leagues. He's been getting it done first 2 weeks of the season here. Kind of has this stigma as a waiver wire fodder kind of guy, but should we be looking beyond that at this point? Is he a viable waiver wire add and start for you?
Andy Dalton's always put up good numbers. We're kind of clouded by he had a very average to below average year last year. My write it down for Andy Dalton this year was 4,400 yards, 35 touchdowns. Right now he's on pace for a little over 4,000 yards and 48 touchdowns. I think the yards pick up a little bit, touchdowns cool a little bit. So I still think I'll be close to right. But right now, he should be owned more than that. From the data I've seen across multiple sites, it actually has even dropped from when you sent this agenda out to about 22.6, which is even worse. Yes. He's number 9 in scoring through 2 weeks. So a lot of guys are getting kept and started, and really just for namesake, not actual value sake, they're starting over Andy Dalton. Even guys like Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff, even Tom Brady to this point are getting started because of who they are and because of who Andy Dalton is. But it's going to cost you weeks if you don't actually check who's scoring and see that Andy Dalton's putting in work right now.
I go one more week, personally. I agree with everything you said, Deal. I would roster him. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I definitely want him this week now. As far as the lineup, I have to be really forced into it this week because you have these conversations when people want to talk fantasy, and it's been 2 weeks. Like, Phillip Lindsay's not going to finish 3rd in the league in rushing. He's just not. So, like, maybe he is. I don't know. Matt Breida's probably not going to lead the league.
Will you be shocked if Andy Dalton is number 9 after the season?
No, and that's kind of ultimately not my point. My point is I'm not making a rash decision, even at 0-2, that I'm, in a 1 quarterback league. If I have Deshaun Watson, you just brought him up, I might give him another week here. It's up to you. But for me, for Andy Dalton, he did okay against the Colts, which they're a better defense than they were, and then he beat up Baltimore, which is great on the surface. But I love that historically home teams on Thursday night, it's going down. And then also, though, you got to look into, he had 4 touchdowns, but his second half was terrible. He played really poorly in the second half in that Baltimore game. So I just want no, it didn't matter for me at all. But what I will say is, is AJ Green going to score 3 touchdowns on 3 targets every time? Of course not.
I hope
so. Yeah, I'm sure you're okay with that. I don't know. For me, again, I'll roster him. He should go. Tomorrow's waiver day across the fantasy universe. He should be clearly up above 60-70% owned. I'm just not going to start him. Now, if he puts up nice numbers in Carolina, I'll be singing a different tune next week.
Yeah.
I'm the king of sample size. It's my favorite thing to go to. But I'm going to go back to a comment I heard last week and I made on this broadcast. If this was 2 weeks of Andy Dalton in the middle of the season after a very average start and very Andy Dalton-like season going on, we wouldn't think twice about it. But because it's weeks 1 and 2, it's all we have to go on right now. But I don't think we can start making decisions based on that. I mean, go back to the famous question we always ask ourselves: what's more likely to happen? Like, which Andy Dalton are we more likely to see? The one we've seen the past 2 seasons, or the one we've seen the past 2 weeks?
Well, 2 seasons ago, it was really good.
Yeah, and honestly,
he was really good. 2 seasons ago, he was
4,200 yards and 18 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions. It is, but I mean, he was good.
I think how I'd counter that, Rocco, is what's more likely to happen is Andy Dalton's a streaky player, and when he's playing well, how many times have we said good Andy Dalton is as good as it gets, bad Andy Dalton is as bad as it gets? Yeah. That's proven all the time. So yes, we do only have 2 weeks to go off of, but we have 2 weeks that show us, I guess, we're getting good Andy Dalton. And you have to take the shot that he sticks with that. It's a new team. We've talked about it. Way better line. New OC that's been there all offseason. Joe Mixon went down, which hurts, but he was killing it. This is an improved team. We all saw this coming, so I'm not going to expect him to regress until he shows me he's going to regress. I'm just not ready to start him yet. That's where I am.
I would agree with you. I'm ready to put him on my roster and see. I mean, he's probably better than – I mean, depending on who your quarterback is. If you waited until, the last guy to draft a quarterback, then you're probably, well, actually, you probably got Pat Mahomes on your team, so you're probably doing okay. but no, but like if you drafted a little bit higher on a guy like Goff or Derek Carr or something like that, then sure, then obviously roster Dalton and probably start him. But don't give up on a stud. Like, for example, a Breeze or whatever, just because, Andy Dalton had 2 good weeks.
I agree, don't give up, but don't be afraid to start Dalton if your stud's weak matchup is rough.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Panthers 23rd right now, fantasy points against, facing opposing quarterbacks, giving up 20 points per game, 19.7. But I'm going to round up and say 20 because I like to deal with whole numbers. So 20 points per game, 23rd. So worth keeping in mind. Philip Lindsay of the Denver Broncos. Right now, they're kind of got a running back by committee thing going. He's looking like possibly the best fit for that offense right now. They keep saying they're going to keep riding the hottest hand, but can you trust his usage going forward enough to, number one, make a claim for him at this point in the season, and then number two, get him going in your starting lineup?
I don't want to take anything away from the guy, but I do think it's a hot hand thing. And I almost, if I could put myself in Vance Joseph's shoes, I would be juiced that he's the hot hand now. Because I'm 2-0, so you've got to be thinking playoff push if I'm Denver. And I want Royce Freeman as fresh as I can have him in the double-digit weeks, when it gets colder out and things like that. So, again, I don't want to take anything away from the start he's had. It's great, but, Rock, you shared with us, there's not a player in the league with more than 184 yards rushing. It's not like he's lights out right now. He's playing very, very well. And ultimately, I'm happy for the guy that forget about a nice draft moment where you got picked. He didn't even get invited to the combine. So I'm pumped for a guy to go from no combine invite to a couple months later, third in the league in rushing after 2 weeks. So that's great. But for me, I don't trust the usage because I think Royce Freeman's time is coming for sure.
Yeah, it kind of seems that way. And, it's funny. You mentioned Vance Joseph. From where they were last year, it really does feel like he must be having the time of his life right now because he's got a bounty at the running back position all of a sudden.
Yeah.
This is a really good problem to have. One thing I'm paying attention to is definitely the usage here. I want to see his workload increase, over the next couple of weeks, because that's going to be more telling to me than anything else is how many more snaps he's going to play, how many more touches he's going to get, because he could just be outperforming other guys right now based on, being a third down option, running more routes, whatever it is. So I want to pay attention situationally to what kind of snap counts and what kind of touches he's getting before I could really commit to making him a regular starter, at least in my opinion.
I don't have a lot to add about Philip Lindsay. He only has 22 carries, so he's not getting the bell cow carries. But I will say it's a great time to buy low on Royce Freeman. You can get him. You can trade him, especially if it's a team in panic that drafted him and now, that maybe have some injuries or they started 0-2. You can get Royce Freeman cheap. I would jump on that right now.
All right, let's talk about Matt Breida, 49ers running back. His workload seems to indicate that he's the guy there right now. I think we all felt like, based on pure talent, Alfred Morris was most likely.
We did not all feel that way.
I think the majority of the fantasy world. So, we'll give you credit where credit's due, but I think the majority of the fantasy world assumed that Alfred Morris was going to more naturally fit into the situation here. Breida, probably his versatility really paying off here, but, is he the guy in San Francisco? I heard somebody talking today and calling him the Kareem Hunt of 2018. I mean, is that going too far?
No.
Yes.
Leading the league right now.
It's not. It's really not. Like I'm not going to be stubborn on this one. I picked up Alfred Morris, I believe, in 6 of my 8 leagues. The day I found out Jerick McKinnon went down, and I was wrong in 6 of those 8 leagues. Matt Breida is absolutely the guy. I'm giving Deal full credit. We had this argument a couple weeks ago. It's Matt Breida. Alfred Morris still has value. He's going to score touchdowns. I know it hasn't happened yet, but he's going to do it.
He will.
But Breida is the guy to own here. This is a Dalvin Cook, Latavius Murray situation for me. Murray's going to have some value. Dalvin Cook's getting the burst of it. And I saw your face, Rock. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that Matt Breida is not sustainable the way he's working right now.
No.
Is he going to lead the league? No, but
I guess my point. Well, that's my point because South just dropped the name Kareem Hunt. Like, dude led the league in rushing last year. I don't think that's what Matt Breida is going to be. That's my point.
I'm taking the Kareem Hunt fight as a guy that no one saw anything coming, and he's absolutely in your lineup every single week. If you finish, I don't know. Is Matt Breida going to finish top 5 in scoring? I'm not going to say he won't. I'm really not. He's absolutely – Deal was perfect. Just, folks, listen 2 weeks ago and listen to our fight. He is absolutely fully filling the Jerick McKinnon role in this offense. He's getting the touches in the running game. He's absolutely the passing down back. I thought he was going to more only be the passing down back, and that's just not how this is happening. He's getting a lot of touches, and he's doing the most with them that he can.
I agree with that part of it. I agree that Deal was right, that we were wrong, that it's Breida over Morris. I guess just the wording of the way South put that, I'm not ready to say that he's this year's Kareem Hunt. Like that's such a stretch to go from he's the best back in San Francisco to he's a top 5 back in the league.
Well, to be fair, those weren't South's words. He said he read that, but
no, I'll call it out too, because it's my arch enemy, the guy who listens to this show every week and steals pretty much all of my content. It's Matt Berry.
Right.
So, he went as far as saying that he thinks that he's this year's Kareem Hunt.
Well, he's been wrong a fair amount. So, but sure. I'll guess I'll ask then, where do you think he'll finish then? Give me a range where you think he'll finish in scoring. Not rushing yards, in scoring.
I think honestly, he could easily be top 15.
Yeah. I have him in the same place. If this is how it's going to wind up going the rest of the season, I have him in the same place that we would have had Jerick McKinnon for 12 to 15 range. He's playing that same role.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I actually think I might put him a little higher than that because he doesn't come with the injury risk of Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, he's
maybe a little bit higher. Maybe a little bit higher, only because we're seeing already that we all had Lev in the top 3. Well, that's not going to happen now. So there's one spot.
Guys move around. Yeah.
Guys get injured. Guys get hurt. But I'm not rushing to have him as a top 5 back just because through 2 weeks he's a top 5 player. And let's be honest, it's really just last week he had an okay week 1 against a great Minnesota defense, but the majority of his stuff came this past week in week 2 against a team that got shredded by 48 by the Jets in week 1. So let's just call it what it is. He had an easier week against the Lions than he did against the Vikings.
Well listen.
Nobody thinks we have 160 yards every week.
No, but that's my point.
Well, this is kind of my pump the brakes on it, is that a lot of that came on a really big play. So not necessarily that I'm saying that I don't think that it's sustainable for him, because he's a candidate for big plays.
Yep.
That's just going to be a part of who he is. But I would just say those big plays are not always going to materialize. So, I think it's reasonable. I do think that his ceiling could easily be like a number 7, 8, number 9 type guy, but I think it's more realistic to slot him in somewhere like 12, 13 in that range, just, based on being reliant on that big play.
I think his ceiling is he could lead the league. He's with Shanahan, and he's lightning fast, and he's a talented athlete. So
there's a chance. The only problem is that Todd Gurley scores 3 touchdowns by halftime every week, and then.
True.
All right, so Gio Bernard, he's going to be the lead dog here in Cincinnati for at least the next couple weeks with Joe Mixon out. I think it's a no-brainer that Gio Bernard's a guy that you want to own if you can. But what can you realistically expect from him? He's not a guy who typically carries the ball 20 times per game. He's kind of been, more of a change of pace guy in that offense. But now that he's kind of the lead guy, what are you expecting out of him?
I don't see why we can't expect a minimum of flex play I mean, I'm even willing to go out solid running back 2 kind of play. We already touched on, in the pods before the season started that Gio Bernard's a nice player and he has standalone value as it is, even with Mixon. And then last year when Mixon went down, he had a great 5 games. 4 of his 5 games as the starter, he was over 5 yards per carry. He scored 2 times in those games. He hasn't looked awesome in his time so far this year, but he's not getting the ball much. I mean, he barely has touches because we're going so much through Mixon. So I don't mind him at all. I definitely think he's a startable player here. Even in the next games here against Carolina and Atlanta. Atlanta struggles historically against receiving type backs. So I kind of think that combined with how much the Bengals offense is just rolling, I like Gio. He's a must start for me while Mixon's out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's a perfect kind of flex option. I don't think you're going to get 20 to 25 carries from him. I just don't. I get it that there's really nobody else there to mix into the situation, but that whoever it is going to get 4 or 5 carries. I do think that you're going to get 15 carries from him. You're probably going to be looking at like somewhere in that 70, 75 yard on the ground area, but you're going to get a bunch of reception opportunities for him. And anytime that he is active in the passing game, he's a candidate to go all the way. He's a matchup nightmare for just about anybody. He's got speed. He's shifty with the ball in space. So I like that about him. I think he's also a candidate for 5 or 6 catches every week.
Yep.
Even with all the different players in Cincy's offense.
Yeah, Gio's a really good back, man. He's not even 27 years old yet, and in his 73 career games, he's only carried the ball 16 plus times in 7 games. In those 7 games, he's averaging 119 scrimmage yards, and he's scored in 5 of the 7. So when given the lead back opportunity, he's putting up lead back numbers. So yeah, I think you nailed it, Miles. I think he shouldn't hopefully be your number 1 running back. He's perfect for flex at this point.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about Keelan Cole, wide receiver of the Jaguars here. Aside from just a ridiculous catch last week against the Patriots, he seems to be the guy that Bortles is getting most comfortable with at the wide receiver position. Does he need to be added to your team at this point?
Yeah. 100%. He's currently wide receiver 23, and he's only 48.7 owned across multiple platforms. He's tied for 5th most 20-yard receptions, which is crazy. And his touchdowns are going to go up, especially if he's having those 20-yard receptions. A lot of those are, or at least some of those, are going to turn into touchdowns. He's going to keep getting looks. He's going to keep getting receptions, and he's going to score more.
Yeah, I think his chemistry is only going to improve with Bortles too. So I liked what I saw from that offense last week. They kind of I don't know. They kind of just let themselves play loose last week. And I think that's who they need to be, honestly. If they want to take that next step, they have to be willing to, open things up. Let Blake Bortles try and throw the ball a little bit more. I can't peg it because from one week to the next, it feels like they trust him. They don't trust him, whatever. But honestly, he's got a chemistry developing here with Cole. And I think that Cole could be a real nice receiver. He could be the kind of guy who, not necessarily every week, but carries your wide receiver group if you have a guy who just struggles that week. So he could be a guy who you could pick up and he could just kind of set you apart from other teams based on that acquisition.
Yeah, it's a name thing. He's the number 1 receiver on the most pass-happy offense in the league, despite the fact that they've had the ball 0 seconds while trailing this year. They've not trailed for a second all year, and they're chucking the ball all over the place. So why would you not want the lead receiver? I still like Westbrook. Moncrief has some value. I get that. He's not like the clear-cut one, but he's the one.
I mean, listen, there's a reason why they let Allen Hurns go and they let Allen Robinson go. They were comfortable with this group, and they're showing why now. I think the thing is, like, especially since Fournette went out early in that Giants game, and they didn't know what to expect. They're throwing the ball because they're not that productive in the run game without Fournette. They're playing with the lead because they're getting the lead early, and that defense is making sure that they keep it. But, like, in order to sustain drives, they have to throw the ball because they're just not doing it on the ground. So And Yeldon honestly is better out of the backfield than he is, as a pure rusher anyway. So they're going to continue to drop back. Both of them, Westbrook and Cole, both have value, but Cole is clearly the number one at this point.
And you could take that from our Jags beat reporter, Rocco.
I'll punch you square in the throat.
All right, guys, let's take a second and talk about our friends at Gorb. Hashtag GHORBH stands for Get Hungry or Be Hungry. If you're watching, you can kind of see that behind us on our backdrops here. Gorb reminds us that in life, you've only got two choices. You could either get hungry or you can be hungry. And I don't know if you guys are active on social media as I am, but everywhere I go, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I'm seeing these posts with the hashtag Gorb. And everybody's looking good in their Gorb gear. Everybody's always having a good time, smiling in their Gorb gear. And I always just thought like, oh, wow, they must have a really good ad campaign. And, they're making everybody really happy about getting some good looking gear. And then I tried it on, especially the Gorb hoodies. And these are legit. All right. These are comfortable clothes. They're stylish. They're high quality. They've got good designs, all kinds of stuff for men, for women, for kids. You could check it out at gorb.com, GHORBH.com. I would encourage you to go there, get yourself some gear, and give yourself that constant reminder that in life, you've got two choices. You could either get hungry or be hungry. All right, let's talk about some start or sit opportunities here this week. And these are some that were either presented to us from people who listen to the show or that we've compiled from popular consensus that is out there based on some matchups that are being explored. So the first one here, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but it just goes to show you how far we've come on this, was Ryan Fitzpatrick versus the Steelers or Phillip Rivers versus the Rams. And as a side note, I also had one from somebody that I work with who said, should I start Ryan Fitzpatrick this week or Deshaun Watson? So you can give me either one of those guys versus Ryan Fitzpatrick. What are we thinking?
I think it's Fitzpatrick, and I only think I think this is extremely matchup heavy at this point. Like, you have Phillip Rivers going against the Rams, who have been very, very good on D. So far, through 2 weeks, the Steelers gave up 23.6 to Tyrod and 38.8 to Mahomes. That's 62.4 points, 31.2 per week. And that's in standard quarterback scoring. So 4 points per touchdown. Like, the 30 points per week from a quarterback with 4-point touchdowns is insane. Yeah. So, I mean, right now, and Fitzpatrick's the number one quarterback in the league right now. So through 2 weeks. So I think just matchup based, it's got to be Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, and on the flip side, the Rams are allowing 6.
Yeah, exactly.
197 passing yards, no touchdowns, and 4 picks. 197 per game, 0 touchdowns and 4 picks for the Rams defense so far this year against Derek Carr, who played okay here last week, and then against the Cardinals, disaster. So you could argue they haven't played anybody yet, but those guys are struggling because the Rams are that good. I think Rivers is going to play better than that. And if I don't have a Ryan Fitzpatrick option, I'm okay playing Rivers.
Right.
But I don't love playing the matchup game when it's like, oh, the Steelers are worse against the pass, I'm starting that guy. But when it's this blatant of a gap between what might be one of the worst passing defenses in the league and what might be one of the best, I have to take that, especially the way Fitz is playing. Him again at home against Pittsburgh is just too juicy for me.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, too, we mentioned just kind of casually Watson. The Giants are 8th right now against opposing quarterbacks. They're giving up 14 per game. I get it. Like, they haven't played.
I played Cam and Dak, though. That's fantasy points because they're both running. So,
well, I had Bortles and Dak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where did I miss? No, not Cam. I'm sorry. Yeah, Bortles and Dak. Right.
Bortles and Dak. But, I mean, even still, like, not the most prolific, jump off the page offenses, especially since, the Jags in the middle of that game lost their running back. So, but also that's a tougher call for me. I feel like I'm still going Fitzpatrick, but that's, it's Houston at home. It's a little tougher, but I'm still going to go Fitzpatrick.
I'd start Rivers over both of them. 100%. I know what everything I said leading up to that. Fitzpatrick, he could put up great numbers. Rivers is still putting up 340 passing yards and 3 touchdowns a game right now. He's number 4 in the league. He's not number 15. So I'm sticking with the Fitzpatrick through 2. Been awesome. I take nothing away from him. Rivers through his whole career, been awesome. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah, but even though the opposing defense is giving up 6 points per game to fantasy quarterbacks, that doesn't scare you at all.
Last week didn't count. This past week just did not count against. That's like saying that the Ravens were awesome because of week 1. Like there are games that don't count for what you take into consideration for who you start for fantasy football.
The Cardinals
are one of those.
They only scored 6 points in the first week too. It's not like the Rams just owned them. I mean, I'm still on Fitzpatrick, but this was of the 4 that you have here, South. This was the hardest one for me.
Agree.
All right, so Gio Bernard at the Panthers or Alex Collins, who most people invested a little bit more draft capital in against the Broncos this week.
I think the reason I'll go with Gio here, and I'm just going to jump in because you talked about the draft capital. Yeah, people invested draft capital in Alex Collins, but not as much as you did in Joe Mixon, and probably not as much as you would have in Gio if he were the lead back in Cincinnati, if he were the clear guy. You know, both defenses have been decent against running backs this year. Carolina is actually the better matchup. They just got beat up on Sunday by Atlanta. Tevin Coleman and Ito Smith go for 179 total yards. And they didn't score the touchdowns because Matt Ryan had 2 rushing touchdowns, which like triples his career average.
Everybody thought that was going to happen.
Right. So he's still fresh. He only has 12 touches to this point on the year. And ultimately, John Harbaugh does not trust Alex Collins since his week 1 fumble. He's just not trusting him. So I got to roll Gio here.
Alex Collins has a lucky touchdown in week 1, honestly, and it was like a very, very close touchdown. Like, could have gone the other way.
I mean, he scored on the Bills, so that's kind of like not.
And it was on the Bills, and it was on the Bills, so it doesn't count. He's got 40 rushing yards on the season. Like, it's time to give this up. Like, I was off this train from the beginning, and now I'm happy I was off of it because I don't think Alex Collins is very good.
Agreed.
And I do think Gio is very good. He's just not as good as Joe Mixon, but now Joe Mixon isn't there. So,
listen, I'm going to play Gio this week, but I'm not done with Alex Collins. I'm
not either.
I think we're going to be talking about him all year. He'll be relevant all year.
We're going to be talking about him in the way that we talk about Spencer Ware, though.
But it's a game.
He's an annoying guy hanging around.
He's going to be frustratingly relevant.
Yep.
It's a game script thing because they blew out the Bills in the first week because they were so successful throwing the ball. And then last week they got behind so quick they had to get away from even trying to run the ball. And then Buck Allen just fits your offense better in that regard. So
I agree. I agree it's a game script thing. Sorry to cut you off, Miles, but I think that we're never going to be able to predict what game script that the Ravens are going to be playing that week unless they're playing the Bills.
They're not a consistent squad. Though I will say for long term, losing Kenneth Dixon definitely helps Alex Collins' case a lot.
Agree.
Here's my problem with game script. You went up so much on the Bills in the first half and then ran the ball out in the second half, and it wasn't with Alex Collins.
Right.
That's the time where we should have seen a healthy dose of Alex Collins against a trash defense where he goes for like 80 yards in garbage time, and we didn't see any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to continue the argument there, but I can't fault them for taking out their hopeful lead back and just saving them when you have the game at hand. I can't be mad at them about that. So
agree.
All right, so Juju Smith-Schuster at the Bucks or Keenan Allen at the Rams.
This was a tough one for me too, actually. If we get word for some reason the Steelers do the right thing and bench Antonio Brown and send a message, then it's a no-brainer for Juju. I'll actually probably start Juju over everybody in the league this week, but I actually think I go Juju here anyhow. He's dominating, and he has a better matchup. You know, I said I'll start Rivers. Will I be surprised if Keenan has 200 yards and 3 touchdowns? No, Keenan can always do that, but I think Juju is definitely the safer bet this week.
Yeah, I don't want to say.
I'm with you on Juju, so I'll save you the trouble there. Obviously, the Rams are the best in the league right now against opposing receivers. Again, swayed a little bit by the fact that they played the Cardinals, but
and it didn't count.
And it didn't count, I guess. But listen, the Bucs haven't been great against opposing receivers, even with, really a poor offensive performance from the Eagles last week. They're still the 7th worst against opposing wide receivers in the league. So they've given up 3 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers at this point. So Juju is scoring right now the most fantasy points per touch of any wide receiver in the league.
It's not close, right?
No, it's not even close. So there's something to that. Yeah. So I'm going to stick with Juju in that instance. But again, Keenan Allen is really good. So he may be matchup proof. I don't know. But my brain tells me that I have to go Juju in that instance.
Yeah, I actually have Juju as well. I'm sad.
And I have Juju as well, too, just because, for as much as we talk about the Bucs being okay in the secondary, Nelson Aguilar had a pretty good game last week for the Eagles, and I think Juju is just as talented.
Similar guys,
yeah, very similar guys. So,
Michael Thomas, I know he kind of doesn't count. He's like a cheat code at this point. But Michael Thomas went 16 for 180 in a score. Ted Ginn went 5 for 68 in a score. Nelson Aguilar went 8 for 88 in a score. Kamar Aiken had 5 catches for 39 yards against the Bucs. They're 2-0, but they've been in shootouts. This is like that game you got to target, like Steelers-Chiefs last week.
Yep.
Give me all the Bucs Steelers.
Yep. Yeah, and listen, the Eagles didn't take advantage of it, but their entire secondary is in the trainer's room.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. And even the backups were dropping like flies last week. So, I would assume that some more legitimate wide receivers and not Kamar Aiken, who was up and down from practice squad to cut to back on the team, is going to take advantage of that. I just do. All right, one more here. Evan Ingram against the Texans or Eric Ebron against the Eagles. Ebron has been finding the end zone, so could be a little bit of appeal there.
This is a no-brainer Ingram for me.
Yeah.
It's, number one, yes, Eric Ebron has scored in both games, but you almost have to now expect the touchdown regression. He's not going to score 16 touchdowns this year.
Gosh, I hope he does.
That's number one. Number two, Ingram scored last week as well, and it was on more catches and yards than Ebron had. So he's getting involved. The Giants are better when he's involved, so I think they have to do that to take some attention off of Odell and such. But more importantly here for me, the Eagles are terrible against wide receivers. This is a T.Y. Hilton, some Ryan Grant, and then a little more T.Y. Hilton game for me. They don't have anybody who can lock that guy. So I think it's the receivers more than Doyle or Ebron at tight end that'll get into the end zone and do some damage here for the Colts.
Yeah, I agree. Ebron's been awesome so far, but I think Ingram really started to catch his stride this week. He's caught all 7 of his passes, went for over 70 yards, caught a touchdown. I'd go Ingram. And like you said, the Giants are better when he gets involved, and everybody else is going to be better when Eli Manning gets to throw the ball faster. That means passes to his tight end.
Right.
This is an area where I'm not chasing the hot hand, so to speak. Look, last week against Jacksonville, the Texans only gave up 2 catches for 15 yards, so it's kind of jading their tight end scoring against. Week 1, 7 catches, 123 yards, and a touchdown to Gronk. Now, I know Gronk is the elite of the elite.
That doesn't count either.
But
Evan, he's more Gronk than he is Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
Right. He's a freak athletic matchup for anybody. So, he could easily have that same output. So I don't expect he's going to go 7 for 123, but I wouldn't be shocked if he catches 6 balls and gets 100 yards. I just wouldn't. So I'm going Ingram.
Yeah, make it 4 for 4. Nothing else to say on that. You guys hit it home.
All right, so let's talk about some initial reactions here after 2 weeks here. It's good to kind of look at things and put some things in perspective. So let's go for like the most crazy thought out there right now, right out of the gates. How many quarterbacks would you draft ahead of Patrick Mahomes if you could redo it right now?
I've been waiting all day to talk about this. I can't wait to hear you guys' answers. I'm gonna sit here.
Can you confidently say any at this point? He's leading the league, and he looks amazing.
One, you can still
draft Patrick ahead of him.
No, you could still say Aaron Rodgers because Rodgers is playing great. I mean, he had 1 bad half against Chicago, and he's played great. The other 3, the rest of the way here. He's not as high as Mahomes right now, but also he played the Bears defense, which we learned last night.
And he was hurt too.
And he was hurt, but so far he played the Bears defense, which we learned last night is nasty. We saw it a little bit in week 1, but now we got a full scope of that. And he played the Vikings defense. So, yeah, I think it's just Aaron Rodgers at this point. I mean, Alex Smith finished QB3 last year. Yep. And we were like, how does this happen? Well, it happens because all the weapons around him are really good, and Pat Mahomes is better than Alex Smith. So,
yeah, he would be one for me. If you could have guaranteed anybody 3 weeks ago that his decision making would be what it is, the physical stuff was never the question.
Right?
Is it going to translate? The physical stuff was never the question. The weapons were definitely never the question. Yep. If you could have guaranteed me his decision making was going to be good, he would have been like QB1. Now his decision making is incredible. He would be like QB1.
Yeah, at this point,
his legs aren't even involved yet.
No,
like he's still just throwing. He's a top 5 scrambling quarterback in the league.
I do expect that there's going to be some touchdown regression there, obviously.
Sure. Of course.
Well, 80 is a little unrealistic.
Right. But
I hope he throws 80.
That'd be awesome.
You hit the nail on the head. He hasn't even started opening up the Pandora's box of the other element of his game. And when he starts doing that, that's a scary prospect. I don't think there's anybody you could comfortably say that you would draft ahead of him right now. Like even with Rodgers, like he's still hurt and he's still got a bad offensive line in front of him.
And he's always hurt.
Gosh, if he starts using his athleticism to his full potential, I would have drafted Tyreek Hill #1 overall in any league. Because if Pat Mahomes uses athleticism, they got to guard Tyreek Hill 1-on-1, and nobody in the league can do that.
No.
It's like Tecmo Bowl.
It's unbelievable.
Like it's like a video game with all the options that they have right now, with Sammy Watkins kind of playing up to some of his potential.
It's 6 for 100. Like, has Sammy Watkins ever had a 100-yard game before?
No.
Without like a 97-yard catch.
I actually don't think he's had any. I think that was his first.
It's just impressive. The Chiefs are so impressive on offense.
It is like Tecmo Bowl because it's like the longer you just let the guys run down the field, that like the quarterback can still throw it that far. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
like
it's true.
Like it's like he can throw it as far as the receiver is down the field. It doesn't matter.
All right. So how do you handle Will Fuller the fourth right now? He seems to be, their big play guy in Houston, and there's some chemistry there because when he's not played, Watson hasn't quite been the same. It seems like Watson is a little more comfortable with him as that deep option. They played a little bit better last week now with him back in the lineup. So, it just feels like he's so hot and cold. How do you handle Will Fuller?
I'm not Mr. Will Fuller most of the time, but what got me this week was he got 8 receptions. That's a career high, and it's 3 more than he had in any game last year. He had 7 in his rookie year one time. Outside of that, he's never had more than 5 catches. So if that's the way he's going to be involved, it's kind of like this. I didn't like this section stuff because it's like filling me with regret. If I had known, now who knows, it's one game, but if I had known he was going to be involved to that level, 9 targets, I'd have been all over Will Fuller. The reason, you can go back and listen, the reason I was out on him is I said, you can't sustain 7 touchdowns on 28 catches. Well, he's not getting 2.5 catches a game. He's got 8. So if he's going to be targeted all around the field, the third-year receiver breakout thing, I want to be a part of it now. I got to be a part of that anywhere I can. And there are a few leagues that he's still out there for me, and we'll find out tomorrow what happens.
I have been a Will Fuller guy from the beginning.
Yeah.
I didn't think the touchdowns were sustainable, but I love the big play, and I love that he's becoming more involved. Listen, the simple fact is you have to double nook. You cannot leave DeAndre Hopkins wide open. And Lamar Miller has been very good in the running game, or respectable in the running game, that you have to keep it honest. So you have Will Fuller, who was one of the fastest receivers coming out a couple of years ago, just considered just a burner, you have him learning the route tree and seeing one-on-one coverage a lot of the time. I'll take that all day.
All right, so is Chris Thompson and his passing game production specifically enough to make him a flex play moving forward? He's got 13 catches on 14 targets for 92 yards this past week.
This is Miles' favorite.
No, you know what? Like, yeah, but Chris Thompson's better than the vast majority of those satellite type backs.
He's also a good running back.
That's what I mean. Like, he's a good player. He's not Danny Woodhead.
Right. I was just going to say he's just as good as Danny Woodhead.
Yeah, right.
He's not Woodhead catching 20 passes for 3 yards a clip.
Right. So, to answer the question, I still wouldn't say every week, but based on opponent, I would definitely jump in. If you can see a shootout. So now Colts Skins obviously didn't turn out this way, but I thought that was going to be a really high-scoring game. I thought Alex Smith was going to have a day. If you can project that and you can feel that, then Chris Thompson's a great play. He's going to be more involved than Adrian Peterson is. If it's more like the Skins Week 1 game, well, Peterson was ground and pound all day against the Cardinals because they were killing him. So if you expect the Skins,
count.
If you expect the Skins to win big, then no, I don't play him. Now, the good news is, while I think Washington's an improved team, I don't think they win big a bunch of times this year.
Yeah.
So I do think more often than not, Chris Thompson is definitely a playable guy. But if you think Washington's going to win big, I wouldn't touch him.
Washington has a tough schedule, so I don't think they're going to win big a lot. I was all in on Chris Thompson before the draft. I drafted him, I think, in every league I'm in. And I'll say again, if he's healthy, he's awesome. I don't expect AP to be a viable option all season. That's why I drafted him in 0 leagues and picked him up in 0 leagues. But if Chris Thompson, if he doesn't have to be the lead back, he's even better.
All right, so would turning to Josh Rosen improve, decrease, or not change at all Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson's stock in fantasy right now?
Can anything hurt it?
Yeah, what would decrease it?
You can't get worse.
Turning to me would be the same.
Yeah, at least I
think I can throw for 60 yards in an NFL game, 64 yards. I think I can. I mean, it'll be close.
I believe it.
It'll be close. I'm not quite the gunslinger that South is.
If we're not positive it's worrisome.
Yeah, right. I think ultimately I'm not blaming Sam Bradford. It's more of a sort of a line issue, but it's more a play calling issue for me in Arizona that's killing these guys. I do think Rosen should play because I think he's the better player at this point. Bradford's not terrible like his reputation is, but it's just not the team for him. I'll put it nicely. But I just think they need to block better and be more creative. David Johnson had 13 carries on Sunday, and only 1 was outside the tackles. And he was only targeted twice, neither one in the first half. Like you have one of the top 5 weapons in the entire league, and you're just like running him in between the tackles with a bad line. Like if he's in Dallas, then run him that way. Fine. He's not in Dallas. So like, what are we doing with David Johnson? Get the guy out there, be more creative with this gift.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the important thing here. And I think that, Steve Wilkes kind of called out his offensive coordinator a little bit and said, we've got to get David Johnson involved more creatively. So I would expect to actually see him split out a little bit more, see him a lot more involved, whether it's running routes in the slot or on screens and things like that. So I think that just based on play design, you're going to start to see him kind of improve. Now with Larry Fitzgerald, I kind of thought that, he'd be the perfect fit for Sam Bradford because of all that underneath stuff. But I just feel like teams are just keying on him and taking him away because they know, that's basically all that they have offensively. So I don't know, maybe a little bit more of a willingness to throw downfield with Rosen would help, but I'm not sure how much.
I think it improves a lot. I'm not holding any punches. Sam Bradford had 27 pass attempts for 90 yards last week. That I understand play calling, but he's the one throwing the ball 3 yards at a time. Like, you have to stretch the field. Like, you can't tell me all your receivers are running 3-yard routes. That's not happening. 27 attempts for 90 yards. That is
So
crazy.
That's
been Sam's MO from the beginning.
Yeah.
We call him check down Sammy for a reason.
But then, like, why does David Johnson have 2 targets?
That's
the
on
more
Sam
unbelievable
Bradford.
part.
Baffling.
That's on Sam
Yep.
Bradford. Like,
Let's
you're throwing to the wrong guy for 2 yards.
let's just agree that there's a lot of blame to go around, and a lot of places you can feel free to put that blame.
I think a lot of it is Sam Bradford.
All right.
Give me a percent, Rocco.
98% Sam Bradford.
That was quick percent.
Seems reasonable. Hey, there's 2 offenses right now that are producing 3 different wide receivers with relevant fantasy numbers. Their 1 through 3 guys are relevant right now. Both the Bucks and the Lions, stop me if you expected that to be true, are keeping Evans, Jackson, Godwin, Jones, Tate, and Golladay all pretty relevant right now in fantasy football. Can this continue? Are these 2 offenses built to keep all 3 wide receivers fantasy relevant and productive? And if not, which offense and players are most likely to drop off?
I would be more willing to say that Detroit will drop off for a couple of reasons. Like right now, they sit 27th. That's the Bucks, and 30th. That's the Lions in rushing through 2 games. And I think we kind of beat down all summer. The Lions' running game will come around. They have a new line. Kerryon Johnson, they're for whatever reason kind of keeping him in their back pocket at 0-2. It's time to not do that, right? Let's get him going. But I see the ability there in Detroit to have a better run game. Tampa is what they are. I mean, you have Peyton Barber, and then Ronald Jones can't even get active. That's how bad he's been through practice. And they've been pass happy. And when Jameis Winston comes back, you're not missing anything on a gunslinger mentality. So, Deshaun's pace, not really sustainable. But I still think he always has that big play in him ready to go.
Sure.
Galladay's definitely a better player than Marvin Jones at this point. And my other reason for Detroit with all that stuff, I think if they keep losing, ultimately they will move Golden Tate or Marvin Jones to a contender that missed out on Josh Gordon.
Wow.
Yeah, I was actually going to say something similar. I think one of those receivers might be moving. If they can't get themselves into any kind of race or become relevant in the playoff talk, it only makes sense to try and get something for one of them.
And you need to feature Kenny Golladay. He's a stud.
Yeah. And look, with the Bucks, like Peyton Barber has every opportunity in the world to just literally run away with that running back job, and he just can't do it. He absolutely can't.
Because he's Peyton Barber.
And if Ronald Jones is bad enough right now that he can't jump Peyton Barber on the depth chart and get more snaps, that tells you how really committed that team is going to be to running the ball. Like they're just going to continue to air it out. That's who they're going to be this year. So I would expect that they're going to sustain it.
I'll believe that the Lions are going to be something other than what they have been when it actually happens. Like at this point, Matthew Stafford's just a guy that throws for 4,000 yards. Right. So I don't see any problem with him being able to fill the stat categories and divvy out to all 3 of those guys. I don't like the sustainability of the Bucs, mainly because I don't know if I trust Ryan Fitzpatrick to be able to do this for an entire season. And then you go to Jameis Winston, and what kind of chemistry is he going to have coming in midseason? I mean, I know he's been there before. I get that. I'm not saying that he
QB1 last year.
Yeah, I don't think it's
second half of the year.
For the second half of the year, and he wasn't for the first half of the year because he's a streaky player.
That's when he's going to play, though. It's good news for him. He's playing second half.
What I'm saying is, if I had to put money on the sustainability of one of these over the other, it would be the Lions because I have no reason to believe that Matthew Stafford's not just going to go out there and throw for 4,000 yards, regardless of record, because that's what he does.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll actually make it 2 versus 2. I agree with you, Rock. I think that if anybody drops off, they might both keep up. I don't know because this is a pretty talented group here. But if anybody drops off, I think it's Deshaun Jackson, which is crazy to say because he's wide receiver 3 right now in half PPR, which is even crazier. But I don't think his trick is sustainable. It never has been for a long time. He could still put up usable numbers, but I look for him to go back to full feast or famine, and he's just in full feast right now. I think you're going to get some more famine here.
He's got back-to-back weeks with 75-yard touchdown plays. Like that's not going to happen.
You're not going to do that all week. Yeah. Although he's 2 for 2.
I was trying to chime in. I had myself muted like a dork. So not to kind of throw the jinx on it either, but he's susceptible to the injury bug as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
I
always
agree.
that to keep in mind. All right, listen, just real quickly here. We don't need to go too far into this because everybody else is kind of beating this topic to death. Josh Gordon is now a Patriot, and other than Rocco being miserable, what do you expect out of this relationship?
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, this could be 2007 Randy Moss, or it could be a guy who's only played 11 games since 2013 and has never been committed to football enough to bother even building chemistry with Tom Brady or learn a new, very complicated offense. This could never take off. And the reason I think it could also never take off is the Patriots essentially will have just traded down a couple rounds for the shot at it working.
Right.
So I don't think they're going to force the issue is my point. If it doesn't work, whatever. We moved from the 5th to the 7th round. Oh, well, bye, Josh. Like, I just don't know what to expect. You hear about what they've got going on up there in New England, and guys have to buy in. And ultimately, we've never been able to rely on Josh Gordon. So, I mean, that being said, everybody wanted their team to be the one that traded a 5th rounder for him.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Because if it clicks, I mean, he's probably the 2nd or 3rd best receiver in football. So I don't know. I mean, it's still a lot of mouths to feed. Edelman's going to come back. You still got Chris Hogan. You still got Gronk. Still got the backfield. He's inarguably 1B at worst in terms of talent on that team behind Gronk or with Gronk, however you want to look at it. We just don't know what Brady's going to do. His boy Edelman's coming back. He loves Gronk. This guy, he may never get on the field. We never know.
Yeah, it's basically what it was when you most likely drafted him. It's still a dart throw. You really, all the potential's there.
With a less defined role, though.
Yeah, you just don't know. You just don't. So I don't think it's going to be like an 07 Randy Moss situation. I just don't. Randy Moss is one of the all-time greatest receivers ever. So I'm not ready to go that route. But am I going to be shocked if he gets 10 touchdowns this year?
No.
Shouldn't be.
No. I just can't rely on it. So I mean, again, it's a dart throw. It's a wait and see approach. So
let me tell you, in my world, Josh Gordon is about to go off. It's going to happen. I think he could have gone off in Cleveland. I think honestly, it was finally time for those two to part ways, and I think it's going to be the best for Josh Gordon. I think getting around a healthy franchise with teams that win on a regular basis and like hold each other accountable to things. I don't see a lot of that in Cleveland. And honestly, I'm not an insider, so I don't know what goes on. But like maybe the reason Josh Gordon's life has sucked for the past 4 years is because what did he really have to live up to in Cleveland? Like, like what if someone getting on his case every week and making sure he's being accountable is what Josh Gordon really needs?
Yeah, that's nearly exactly what I said. I'm going to go out on a limb for this guy. I think he could be the type of guy that flourishes with a complete change of culture, both disciplinary culture and winning culture. That there's an organization that says, hey, I know we didn't invest a lot, but we invested in you. Now we expect big things from you. We see talent in you. That's why we brought you in. And we win a bunch of games. So be a part of this. And he didn't have any of that in Cleveland, not 1 ounce of it. So I think it's going to be good for him.
The great Chip Kelly once said, culture beats scheme any day.
Well, they got both, so
I just thought it was ironic to throw it in there. All right, listen, last order of business here. We've got to get to our Survivor picks. As you know, Rocco and Deal are eliminated from Survivor.
Up.
Now, did that just happen, or has that been?
Shut up.
That's been since week 1.
Okay, I was just making sure.
So let's recap here. Miles has used the Ravens and the Rams last week. I used the Jaguars, and I also used the Rams last week. So those two teams are out, or those teams are out for each of us to be reused at this point. So I will defer to Miles here and allow you to give us your pick first.
So there's an obvious one this week.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Vikings are hosting the Buffalo Bills this week. And as Deal has kind of already said, that game doesn't really count.
That's right.
So I'm not going to pick it. My honest reasoning for not picking that is having played Survivor pretty deep into the season. I've never made it before, but I have played deep into the season. I don't want to use a team that I think is one of the 4 best teams in football already. I think later down when I have some tougher matchups and I've got some teams used up, it's going to be nice to have Minnesota in my back pocket. So I'm going to take a little bit of a chance here week 3, and I'm going to roll with the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the San Francisco 49ers. I think the Chiefs take care of business. I don't love the way Jimmy G has played to this point. I know they're 1-1, but I don't think he can even come close to matching what we've seen out of Patrick Mahomes, Patty Ice this week. So I'm going to take the Chiefs.
That's a good pick. I did consider that game. I also considered my chicken with the head cut off approach of just taking the best team versus the worst every week. Mm-hmm. But I thought about it as well. I'm going to want the Vikings later in the year as well. So I'm going with the Bears to beat the Cardinals. It's a Sunday 4:25 game. So it's at Arizona. I know the Bears, they've looked kind of hot and cold at times offensively this year, but I'm confident that they're going to go into Arizona and get the job done this week. So to recap, Miles has the Chiefs. I have the Bears, and you two suckers are not playing.
Quit saying it.
Can I read you a tweet of why I did not pick the Bears on the road?
You can.
I don't love enough the way Mitchell Trubisky has played. Here's the tweet. Imagine going to a steakhouse where the salads are great, the drinks are great, the desserts are great, but the steaks are a total wild card. That's the Chicago Bears.
It's a very valid point.
Chicago Bears. If you go to a steakhouse and the steak is crap, I don't want to go back there, no matter how good the mashed potatoes and apple crumb pie and all that stuff was. I'm not going back.
I'd go to a restaurant. I'd go to a restaurant just for the apple crumb pie.
All right, you get my point. The point here ultimately is I'm scared of Chicago on the road.
You don't like apple crumb pie?
No, not even a little bit. But
that's
I'm scared. I'm scared of the Bears on the road till I see a more consistent Trubisky.
Yeah, and I get that. My thought here is that this is probably a good chance to try and sneak them in.
Yeah, it's a good time to pick the Bears for sure.
So we'll see how it works out for us. Obviously, either game could go either way. So good luck to those of us still alive and Survivor.
Jeez.
Hey, that's it for this week's edition of the show. Good luck to everyone in week 3 in all of your leagues. Be sure to keep up with us at facebook.com/footballgoons, at footballgoons on the Twitter, and then right here on our YouTube channel each and every Tuesday night. We always have some good, fun conversation going on in the chat, so we encourage you to jump in and join on that. Make sure you're checking out footballgoons.com all week long. Obviously, the podcast is going to hit basically as soon as we're done here. Tomorrow, we'll have our updated week 3 fantasy rankings for you for setting your lineups. And then on Thursday, we'll hit you with our Goons, Ghosts, and daily fantasy values all in one spot. No banner ads, no paywalls, no obnoxious pop-ups or autoplay videos. It's all right there in easy to read, good presented format for absolutely free. Check it out, footballgoons.com. We'll catch you guys next time.